Hi readers, Chris here. Today I'm coming at you with a double book review. I'm going to be talking about Kingdom of Copper by S.A. Chakraborty and then also Hotel Magnifique by Emily J. Taylor. If you can't tell, my voice is almost back to 100%. Not quite 100%, but much closer than it has been recently. So thank you all of you who have stuck with me through my recovery. I really appreciate it. So I'm going to jump in and talk about Kingdom of Copper first. Kingdom of Copper is the second book in what is known as the Davabad trilogy. This is the sequel to City of Brass, which I did do a full-length review for way back last year. And let me tell you, I should not have waited so long to read this book. I should not have waited so long. It is one of those fantasies that has like a lot of world building, a lot of characters, a lot of terminology, and I did not remember half of it from book one. Thankfully, there is a glossary in here. But the basic setup of this world, if you're not familiar with City of Brass and Kingdom of Copper, this is all based on Middle Eastern mythology and folklore. So our main character, her name is Nari. She was living in the streets of Cairo, and all of a sudden this magical jinn appears in her life. She kind of has these magic powers. She's always had them. She doesn't really know where they come from, but her powers called this jinn forth, and he brings her to this magical city called Davabad. And in Davabad, there are all these different tribes of jinn. Now, they're sort of like genies, but they're sort of not, because we in America think of jinn as genies, but in Middle Eastern, it's totally something completely different. I'm not even going to pretend that I really know anything about it. I just know that it is completely different. So the jinn in this book, there's all these different tribes, and there's, if you're like pure-blooded, you're a deva. If you are like, you have the blood of a human and a jinn, then you're what's known as a shafit, and there's very much disparities between, the pure bloods and the not pure bloods. Some tribes worship fire, some worship water. There are so many different factions and sects within this world, specifically within the magical city of Davabad, where it all takes place. And all these different tribes and groups have different goals, different things they're trying to achieve, so they're constantly in conflict. Currently, Davabad is ruled by this family, this specific tribe. There's Ghassan, he's the king, and he has two sons, Ali and Mutandir. And there's like a very long history about why this family is in power, how they came to power, how they didn't quite do it in like an up and up way, and Nari, the tribe that her ancestors come from, they're in conflict. It's a lot. So that's kind of like the basic rolled up setting here. But within this book, in the first book, was really about Nari figuring out who she really was, who her ancestors are, what her history was. In book two, she is kind of trapped. She's kind of stuck. She's stuck in this magical city. She's stuck with this ruling family. She can't leave. She can't do what she wants to do. So she's constantly like doing these little things to try and like assert herself, even though the people that are in charge are really like, they really don't like Nari, I guess I should say. They have their own agenda. They definitely have their own agenda. Now, there's three characters in this story, the same three characters that we had in book one. So we have Nari, and we have all the chapters from her POV as she's in the city trying to assert her power. She thinks that, based on what happened in book one, and this is hard to say without spoilers, but she has certain notions in her mind about some of the other characters that may or may not actually be true. One of those characters being Ali. So Ali, Prince Ali, fabulous, different thing. But Ali is the son of, the king of Davabad, but he's the second son. So he's not in line for the throne, and he's the second son. But so he's meant to be a soldier, he's meant to be a warrior. From a very young age, he has been raised that, like, you know, family, duty, honor, like, that's the thing. But after everything that happened in book one, like, he's really questioning a lot of stuff, really questioning a lot of things. And there's something magical that happened to him that no one can explain, and he doesn't understand. He has these new powers coming into book two, and he doesn't really know why. I think out of all the characters, I actually like his POV and his journey the best, because he has very strong opinions. And even though he loves his family and wants to put his family first, he also understands and sees that what his family is doing is not always the right thing. Like, he sees the way his father allows the half-bloods to, like, you know, these horrible things happen to them because they're not as good or not as pure as the purebloods. And he really, like, all he wants is for everyone to be treated fairly and equally. He doesn't want to see people, you know, hurt for no reason. But he's also very naive. He also does not understand the politics at play. And there's a lot of politics at play in this book. So if you are someone that likes, you know, court intrigue and politics and all that type of stuff, it's in here a lot. And Ali does not understand how those games are played. He doesn't understand that if he wants, you know, this thing over here, then he needs to, you know, maybe appease or make a deal with this noble over here. Ali just goes for things head first without thinking of the consequences. And a lot of times the consequences are not great. They're not great. And again, him and Nari have this very tumultuous relationship. In book one, they kind of started out as enemies, then kind of became friends, and there was a romance that was hinted at. Now book two is basically the same thing. They start out as enemies, they kind of become friends again, there's a little bit of a romance hinted at, but it never progresses beyond that. So I felt that Ali's personal story and where he goes from being the naive do-gooder to how he ends up and where he ends up in relation to the rest of his family. That's probably the favorite thing about this book. What I don't like is that I don't like that him and Nari's relationship was exactly the same as book one. So one good thing, one bad thing. That brings me to the third character of this series, which is Dara Yabahush. And Dara is the jinn. He's the jinn that rescued or took Nari in book one and led her to Davabad because he thought that her being part of this ancient Nahid tribe, that is where she belonged. And obviously, after everything that happened in book one, now she's kind of trapped there, so it's not really where he belongs. At the end of book one, it was assumed that he was dead. Everyone thinks he's dead. Now, yes, technically you could say that's a spoiler in book two, but it says it on the back. So obviously we know he's still alive. I think there might have been there was like an epilogue at the end of the first book. So him being alive is not really a spoiler. But through most of the book, where Dara is, who rescued him, and who he is with through most of this book is kind of a spoiler. So I'm not going to say. So let's just say that there is a third group outside of Davabad, so outside the city, who want to take control. They want to kick the current ruling family out. They want to invade. They want to take over because they think that it's their right, it's their destiny, it's what they're owed, it's how it used to be. And Dara is totally on their side because he has seen, in book one, he has seen what happened to Nari. He has seen how the king and his family have done all these horrible things. So in Dara's mind, he's like, yes, I want to help these people. I want to help them invade the city, capture it, take over, etc., etc. But, you know, just like every other book, Dara doesn't really understand what the real motivations of this group that he's with are. The people that are in charge of this group, they may say certain things, but they have their own motivations. And I feel like at this point in his life, Dara has been alive for thousands of years. He's seen thousands of conflicts, fought in thousands of conflicts. I feel like he should be a little bit more intelligent as to what is actually going on. And he's basically being used, and like you could just tell he's being used. And he just kind of goes along with it. And it would be one thing if like he had no choice and he was being like, I don't know, tortured to go along with it. But that's not the case here. He is choosing to go along with it, and I feel that's like a little bit weird for him. So, whatever. I don't know if I really like that. But all in all, what I really want to say about this book, again, so I like Nari, kind of split on Ali and Dara, wasn't a big fan of his storyline. Overall, I feel like this book runs into the issue that a lot of sequels do. It's a sequelitis book. And that is, like, book one was really, really exciting. And then you have this middle one where I feel like, as big of a book as this is, there's not a lot of stuff that actually happens. Like, it's a very slow story. And little things happen along the way. But nothing big really happens until the end. In book one, there were big things happening all the time. Nari's whole journey from Egypt to Davabad was full of all sorts of adventures and exciting things. That is not what happens in this book. It's very slow. Not a lot happens. And I also feel like the stuff that does happen is leading up to book three. This book is basically set up for book three, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I don't like it when books don't have a clear beginning, middle, and end. I'm going to take the Percy Jackson series just as an example because I finished reading it. Each of those books has a very clear beginning, middle, and end. Plus, there's an overarching story. This book does not have a clear beginning, middle, end. It has a little bit of a beginning, middle, end, you could argue, but it's not as clear as book one. And I'm assuming that book three will carry on a lot of the things here. So at the end of the day, I did enjoy this book. I enjoyed it enough that I'm going to pick up the third because I want to see how the series ends. But I think I liked City of Brass a little bit better. So hopefully the series ends on a high note. Moving on, same outfit, different day. Today, I'm going to be talking about Hotel Magnifique. I'm going to try to keep this one shorter than Kingdom of Copper because I felt like I was rambling a lot. Sorry about that. But Hotel Magnifique. Some of you may or may not remember that when I first heard about this book coming out, I was super excited because the premise of this book is that basically it is a magic hotel. So Hotel Magnifique is a magic hotel that randomly appears in different cities around the world. It can appear at any time, and the guest who can afford to stay there, because of course it's only the wealthy that can, the guests that can afford to stay there, there's all these magical things that happen in the hotel, and like I said, it appears in a different place, so you basically get to travel the world without having to leave the comfort of your hotel. How cool is that? So the setup of the story here is that we have two sisters, Janie and Zosa. Janie and Zosa lost their mother, and now they're kind of, I don't want to say living on the streets because Janie does have a job, but they kind of live in like a public house with a lot of other young girls, and Janie just kind of works like a super crappy like 9-to-5 job in a factory, but she wants something better for herself and for her younger sister. Her younger sister she has a great voice, so she kind of makes money on the side, like singing just out in the street, busking, if you will. I don't know if busking is just for instruments or singing, but you know what I mean. Street performer type thing. So all of a sudden, of course, Hotel Magnifique appears in their town, and Janie is like, oh my God, this is going to be so amazing if we can get in. But, okay, small spoiler, they get into the hotel. Both sisters, they get in. Of course they did, because if they didn't, there wouldn't be a story called Hotel Magnifique. So, small spoiler, but once they get into the hotel, they get separated, and Janie quickly realizes that the hotel is not everything she thought it was supposed to be. She thought that it was going to be this magical experience. She thought that this was going to change her life and Zosa's life, her and her sisters. She thought that like everything wrong about her life was going to be fixed and things were just going to be so great. But of course, that does not happen. She quickly realizes that there is a lot more going on at the hotel than she originally thought. And most of that revolves around the maitre d' of the hotel, Alistair. He is not the person that she thought that he was. He's this mysterious figure. Everyone thinks he's handsome because he's this super powerful magician. And in this world, there aren't a lot of magicians out there anymore because magic kind of has like this, I don't know, honestly, the world building is a little bit vague here on why, but it's like some magic is seen as like super dangerous and no one should have it and it's kind of shunned upon. But within the hotel, it's like accepted that magic is okay and it's wonderful. So I'm a little unclear as to why that is, but like it needs to be that way for the story to work. So I feel like in that part, the world building is a bit weak. It's a bit weak, if I'm being honest. Yes, I think a magic hotel is super cool. Like I was sold on this book at Magic Hotel. And throughout most of the book, like, long story short, I really enjoyed this book. I did. But at the same time, there's nothing about this book that really, like, wowed me. Nothing that I was super excited about. Like, House in the Cerulean Sea that I read recently, that book wowed me. The Hero of Ages, Brandon Sanderson, that book wowed me. There's nothing in this book that wowed me. I'll start, like I said, the world building is, it's basic. Magic hotel, weird magic rules in this world, and sometimes I don't even quite understand how the magic in the hotel works either, but I didn't really care that much. So, I didn't care that much, so it didn't bother me. But if you were someone that's like really detail-oriented and wants to know how everything works, it might bother you. So, one thing to be aware of. The other thing here is I want to talk about the characters. So Janie, and like I said, she has a little sister, Zosa. Because she is separated from Zosa for a majority of the book, we really don't get to know that much about their relationship. The only thing that we know about their relationship is through whatever Janie shares. She's the main character in the story. She's the POV that we get. We don't really get Zosa. So I don't really know anything about her, and I don't really know anything about their relationship. And it kind of left me feeling like I didn't really care about them that much. Like, I didn't really care about them that much. I didn't care what happened to Zosa, and I didn't really care what happened to Janie that much. I did not feel any sort of connection with her. She very much reminds me of how Alina is, if you've read the Shadow and Bone series. In the beginning of that series, Alina is like a blank slate, and I kind of feel like that's how Janie is here too. She's kind of a blank slate. But she also falls into what I think is one of the most annoying YA tropes out there. She falls into the category of girls who don't think they're special, but actually are super special. That's the category Janie falls into. I'm not going to say why, but you can come up with your own theories. And I'm really over that trope. I don't like it. When I see it, it just kind of makes me roll my eyes. So that's what happened here. There's also a romance in this book. There is another person that works at the hotel. His name is Bell, and he has all these magical powers. He works for Alistair, but he befriends Janie, and he kind of becomes her only friend in the hotel when she's trying to figure out how to save her sister, how to break free, how to unravel the mystery. Bell is like the only one that helps her in any sort of way, and a romance develops between them. But it is the most standard, generic YA romance that I've ever read. Like, that sounds like I don't like this book, and that's not true. I enjoyed it. It's fine, but that's just it. It's fine. It's just okay. Belle and Janie's romance is so generic. It's so plain. Like, there's nothing that exciting about it, and I will say that the book tries, and the author tries to throw in like a couple little plot points here and there to try and make it more interesting. But for me, it didn't really work. It didn't make it more interesting to me. So there's nothing wrong with it. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. But for me, I need a little bit something more at this point. At this point in my life, I have read so much YA, so much fantasy. Like, in order for me to be like really wowed by something, I need a little bit something extra. And this book did not have that little bit something extra. So if you are just looking for like a standard, quick, you know, feel good YA fantasy, yeah, definitely pick this up. It's a fun read. It's a standard YA fantasy. It's, you know, it's fun. It's great. Like I said, I was sold at Magic Hotel. But if you need something more in your books, and in order for me to like say, yes, I absolutely loved it, I need something more. If you need something more, I would say this one is probably a pass. I'm glad that I read it. I don't regret that I read it. It's not going to end up on my top 10 of the year. Maybe it would end up in like a top 30 or something. I don't know. It's hard. It's hard for me because I do like it. There's nothing like glaringly wrong with it. It's just middle of the road. The world building is like middle of the road. The characters are generic. The plot is kind of... I didn't really talk about the plot a lot, I guess. And now I'm rambling again. But the plot of this book is a little bit all over the place. It's a little bit all over the place. Because when Jeannie is in the hotel, she goes to different parts of the hotel. And in different parts of the hotel, she meets different people and experiences different things. So it's like, all of a sudden, she's in the lobby, and there's a magic orange tree, and you can't break any of the oranges, and there's like weird rules. But then all of a sudden, she goes into the salon, and there's different people there, and there's people that turn into birds, and like all the magic that happens is like so random and all over the place that it doesn't feel like there's any connective tissue there. So it kind of ties back a little bit to the world building, where it's a little bit all over the place. So again, I keep saying this, but it's a fun book. It's fine, but it's a bit generic. So if I had to pick out of the two, because I didn't love everything about Kingdom of Copper either, but if I had a sequel to Kingdom of Copper and I had the sequel to Hotel Magnifique in front of me, I would probably pick the sequel to Kingdom of Copper over this one. That brings me to the end of the video and the end of my rambling. My full-length review of Hotel Magnifique and Kingdom of Copper. If you've made it this far in the video, tell me which one of these books that you would rather read. Would you rather read the sequel that suffers a bit from sequelitis, or would you rather read the generic YA fantasy? Let me know in the comments section below. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not already, please subscribe to my channel for more bookish reviews coming your way soon. Happy reading!